I wanted to record a short video that answers probably one of the most common questions that I get students asking me before, or actually more commonly after my flow classes. And it has to do with the movements that we create a lot in Vinyasa or flow yoga, where we're stepping feet backwards and forwards from the front of the mat. Often stepping forward from downward dog, but also stepping back as well. So thinking about stepping forwards from downward dog first. So if I'm here, quite often I'll say to my students, step your foot forwards between your hands. And for some people, it will step. For other people, they'll try and step forwards and they'll kind of get to about here and they'll be like, okay, now I'm stuck. And if you're coming into a lunge, then you end up bringing your back knee down, your stride's too short, and then you have to step that foot forwards. In the meantime, it might feel like all the rest of the class has moved on without you. So if you're experiencing that, the first thing you should know is you are not alone. This is really, really, really common. And if you think about the shape of downward dog, the relative proportions of your body are really going to come into play here. So if I had really long legs relative to the length of my arms and my spine, then it's going to be much harder to get that extra length through compared to if I say had longer arms. That would give me much more space to put my foot through. So there are a few things you can try to make this a little bit easier. Probably my number one tip is don't worry about trying to do it with your hands flat. So for me, I can step a foot forwards with my hands flat. I very rarely do it because it's kind of hard work, maybe if like my teacher's watching. So if I was going to step this left foot forwards, rather than doing it with my hand flat, I might maybe come up onto my knuckles on that hand if you're watching my left hand, or maybe even come up onto my fingertips. So when I do that, that's going to give me that much extra space from wrist to fingertips to be able to step my leg forwards. And for me, with my proportions, that feels much more comfortable. So you can try coming up onto knuckles, coming up onto fingertips, or even as you step forwards, just maybe, if it feels comfortable, take your weight on the other hand and let the arm on the side of your stepping forwards, that could lift up completely. That feels okay on the supporting hand. Another thing to think about is sometimes I see people stepping forwards, and as they start to shift, gravity kind of grabs hold of their hips and their torso, and they swing low towards the floor. So it's almost like they're in a plank position, and then they're trying to step forwards, which makes it much harder. So as you come forwards, keep thinking about hips really high. So you may want to come right up onto tiptoes, keep pushing the floor away to give yourself maximum space. Another maneuver that might help. So if you've got kind of soft tissue perhaps on the front that is getting in the way of leg coming forwards, you could try taking your leg more out to the side. So if I was to turn to face you a little more, instead of stepping straight forwards like this, I could perhaps take my knee more out to the side and give myself a bit more space. So if none of those cut it for you, then know that you are completely fine and you are still just as good at yoga. You're still just as nice a person or anything else that your mind might tell you stories about if you get your foot to here, maybe you come up onto fingertips, you get it to there. And then if you want it a little bit further forwards, you just grab it, bring it forwards, back knee down. Another way of doing it, if you prefer, is just when you're stepping forwards, you could choose to drop your knees down and step it forwards. Okay, so try out those things, perhaps in the order that I suggested them. So changing height of hand for lots of people that I've spoken to over the years, that's been a real help for them. So also thinking about stepping back. So quite often I'll cue my students who will be at the front of the mat, will fold forwards. And then from the front of the mat, I'll ask them to step a foot back, maybe to a lunge. So if when you step back, you find yourself in really too short a stride lunge, and then you have to adjust the length again. Notice where you're placing your hands when you fold. So the most obvious position when I fold forwards like this is to just let my arms drop and fingers end up underneath my shoulders. So I've got this gap between hand and arms. If from here, I step my foot back, even if I step it as long as I can, see how my front knee is going to bend forwards and I end up in quite a short stride lunge. In comparison, if I fold forwards and put my fingertips more by my feet, so you might need to bend your knees a bit more to do that, that's okay. So instead of in front of your feet, hands are more in line with feet. If I take the same length step back, I end up in a much longer length lunge and my knee has stayed over my ankle. So if stepping back and getting that length is your problem, think about taking your hands further back when you fold. If stepping forwards and getting your foot forwards towards front of your mat is your problem, think about hand placement, about maybe taking a leg wider, lifting up higher as you come forwards. And then there's just alternative ways of doing it. If in your body, perhaps with your proportions or just your preference, you want to try a different way of doing it. There's no better or worse way of stepping backwards and forwards from the front of your mat or from the back of your mat. They're all just as good as each other. So I hope that was useful. If you have any questions or comments or any more videos you want to see, just pop me a comment below and I will respond. Thank you very much.